After the Catholic Church, the mermaid sent me to the mosque. She tells me that the god Allah is the collaborator of their master Lucifer, so I went to the mosque. The imam of this mosque welcomed me warmly because he was in communication with my wife the mermaid. This imam gave me a series of Islamic prayers called dua. He instructed me to recite these prayers after sacrificing each victim, in order to veil my face and avoid the vengeance of the spirits of these victims. Indeed, when an innocent man is killed, he dies with the image of the face of his executioner in his soul, and this image is kept in his memory. To prevent my image from being perceived and kept in the memory of my victims, I had to recite these Islamic prayers. When the victim knows his executioner, his soul will seek justice against the person who killed him, as was the case between Cain and Abel. Then the mermaid sent me to the third church, which is a sect called Kimbangwist. There they gave me 2 handkerchiefs, a green and a white. I had to wipe the victim's face to remove my face from her memory. After that, the mermaid said to me, Joseph, you will start sleeping with 5 women who will be your victims, but not just any. Only those who are targeted and programmed, since these women have profiles and things that connect them to us. There are people who are born into families that have spiritual problems, alliances, pacts and links that connect them to the dark world. These covenants are like open doors giving free access to the world of Satan. It is written in the book of Ezekiel 16:15. The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, confront Jerusalem with her detestable practices and say, this is what the sovereign Lord says to Jerusalem. Your ancestry and birth were in the land of the Canaanites, your father was an Amorite and your mother a Hittite. On the day you were born your cord was not cut, nor were you washed with water to make you clean, nor were you rubbed with salt or wrapped in cloths. No one looked on you with pity or had compassion enough to do any of these things for you. Rather, you were thrown out into the open field, for on the day you were born you were despised. The mermaid informed me that there are people living on the earth of which we have free access in their life because of their origin, their customs, and traditions, their ancestral lineage and genealogy. Many people come from ancestral lineages linked to practices, customs, traditions, and alliances that are open doors and free access to the devil's world. Children of God must disconnect themselves from loads and spiritual heritage of their families, and from family alliances. They must cut the links and connections connecting them to ancestral spirits and genetic heritage. When the day of my mission arrived, in the morning when I woke up I saw a lot of money on my bed as the mermaid had promised. I was supposed to spend that money on the same day, so I hired a taxi for the whole day so as to be able to move from one neighborhood to another in the city. Since I did not want the driver to report to the police, I sent a demon of death to kill the driver at the end of the day as soon as my mission was over. This was to avoid the police. This testimony is the 5th part in a series of 6. Please read the other 5 parts. I had to kill my victims through sex. In fact, my saliva had become the venom of a snake and it paralyzed the victim who became unconscious. Before sleeping with these women, I took time to suck tongues with them. To inject my saliva, which was the venom of a snake meant to paralyze them. Whenever I slept with these women, the mermaid was in hiding in the bathroom. Once the victim was paralyzed by my saliva, which was the venom of a snake, the mermaid would come out of the bathroom to kill or finish the victim off. I was only paralyzing the victim with my snake venom, but it was the mermaid who was finishing with the victim. Before killing the victim, the mermaid introduced her hand to the victim's forehead to remove her star, her destiny and her wealth. After capturing the victim's star, the mermaid finished the victim off. When I started this operation, I had to start with the women whose name begins with the letter S, then the letter A, then the letter T and so on. The rosary confided to me by the Catholic priest vibrated to signal me and tell me the next victim. When it was 7 p.m. that day, I had already reached the 19th woman, so I was tired. Then I went to the house to drink some water and refresh myself. But all this was prepared by the enemy. When I arrived home, my sister was present. I asked her for some water to drink. While I was drinking the water, the rosary began to vibrate to signal that my sister was the next target. I could neither believe nor accept what was happening to me. I checked out in the street. Maybe there was a woman, but there was nobody. When you work with the devil, at first, he will give you the impression that your life and that of your family is spared, but in reality, from the start, you are the target. When I realized that I had to sleep with my sister and that she was going to die, I began to argue with the mermaid. I said to her, "How can you do that to me? She's after all my sister." But the mermaid was cool. She said to me, "Joseph, if you do not do as we instructed you, you will die." So I slept with my sister and she died in the hands of the mermaid. I was filled with shame and anger against the mermaid. When I came to Christ, I confessed to the family that I had slept with my sister and she was killed by the mermaid. It was catastrophic in the family, but in the end, they ended up forgiving me. After the death of my sister, I was in the car with the mermaid when the rosary vibrated. I was looking in the street to see the next target, but I did not see anyone. The mermaid said to me, "Look well and you will see." As I watched, to my surprise I saw a mad woman lying in the trash. It was incredible. I could not accept it. I felt betrayed by the mermaid, so I picked up a quarrel with her. The taxi driver noticed that I had spoken in a vacuum since he did not see the mermaid, but I pretended to talk to myself, when in fact I was talking with a mermaid. This is the reality. When we serve a devil, he will ask you to sleep with a corpse, with your mother or daughter, even with a madman. That's why you should not envy people on the street, because you do not know the realities they are going through. The question that must be asked is this: why had the mermaid planned and wanted me to sleep with this mad woman? In the Bible, we notice that there was a madman who lived in the cemetery. This man had in him a legion of demons. The mermaid knew that this mad woman had multitudes of demons in her, and once I had slept with her, these multitudes of demons would be transmitted to me. The siren wanted the legion of demons that lived in her to come in and live in me, to change and influence my personality and my behavior. In this way, I would become heartless. My personality was changed after sleeping with a mad woman because of the multitude of demons that were transmitted to me. Many leaders are often sent to sleep with mad women by the devil so that the demons that inhabit these mad women be transmitted to them. Some people are heartless because of the sacrifices and realities they encounter in fetishism and occultism. They are heartless. They are never charitable because of what they go through and their experiences. After sleeping with the mad woman, I went to a popular bar in the city where there were many prostitutes. In this place, I met the last woman. I have always said that a prostitute is a witch since she is exposed to all kinds of people. They are often frequented by occultists who always need sacrifices and human blood. Many Satanists before dying frequent the prostitutes in order to unload on them their demons. So after luring this prostitute woman, we got into the car and were driving to a local hotel. On the way, this woman said to me, "I and my sister have been doing this work for a long time. But my mother surprises us with her commitment to her church stories. She keeps telling us that we are going to serve God, and she spends all her money on these corrupt pastors and churches, and that's why we're in conflict with her." Listening to this prostitute, I realized that her mother was fighting for their salvation in prayer, but that did not mean anything to me. When we arrived at the hotel, the prostitute lady opened her bag to take a condom. She realized that by mistake she had put in her bag the Bible and the envelope of her mother containing the money for the contribution of the building of the church. At that moment, the disposition of her heart changed. She told me that she had to go home to return this envelope to her mother, and then she would come back. I objected to this suggestion and proposal because it was almost midnight. If I did not fulfill this last sacrifice, I would die myself. I offered to increase the price she had asked me, but to my surprise she refused. I offered to give her 10 times the amount she had asked for, but she refused. So I thought, it's going to be midnight and I do not have a choice, so I have to rape her. But I did not know that Jesus Christ was fighting to save the life of this prostitute lady because of her mother's prayer, and her financial contributions to the work of God. As time ran out, I tried to rape her, but she had become very strong and she screamed to alert the people of the hotel. When the hotel workers came, I tried to bribe them, but they refused. Then the prostitute lady went away. This lady was saved thanks to her mother's prayers and financial contributions to the church. After leaving, I was alone at the hotel. It was midnight. I was waiting for death or madness. I knew that once you failed in the realm of Satan, there is no compassion. The rules are rigid and must be respected. I had offered 24 people instead of 25 as the mermaid had prescribed. I knew the worst was waiting for me. As a result, I started to drink in order to get drunk so that death would find me in a state of drunkenness. But to my surprise, I was still not drunk. There are times in life when you cannot escape the gravity of your situation by drunkenness. When I tried to sleep, the mermaid entered the room. She was extremely angry. In fact, she was accompanied by two entities that were newts. Their upper part was human, but their lower part was that of a fish. I knew they had come to finish me. Then the mermaid said to me, "Joseph, give me." I said, "What do you want me to give you? I gave you 24 people instead of 25, and because of just one person, you want to kill me." She said, "We don't work like that. I asked for 25 people. You should have given me 25 souls. But you have failed again." As I noticed that the mermaid was extremely angry, I got down on my knees. I started begging her not to kill me since she seemed decisive. So she said to me, "Joseph, give me the rosary, the Islamic prayer, and the 2 handkerchiefs." Which I did. Then I saw the mermaid chatting with the 2 newts. When she was talking with them, I thought they were discussing how they would kill me. Then the mermaid said to me, "Joseph, you have one last chance. Give me your blood. Give me a member of your family." Then she made a sign with her hand and a magic mirror appeared. She ordered me to call my father's name in the mirror. I began to call my father's name, and as a result, his image appeared in the magic mirror. The mermaid was supposed to kill him, but she said to me, "Joseph, your father works for us. He is in alliance with us, so we cannot kill him because he is our agent." In fact, my father was close to President Mobutu, and the circle of President Mobutu was all occultists. The mermaid then asked me to summon my mother so that she could appear in the magic mirror, so I started to call my mother's name insistently, but something happened. Fire came out of the mirror, and I noticed that the fire was chasing the mermaid and the 2 newts. I heard them screaming and crying out in anguish and terror. I did not know that my mother was a born-again Christian, so we were attacked by this flame of fire, but God spared me. It is these spirits of the waters that underwent the attack. Sorcerers and occultists can watch Christians in magic mirrors, but they cannot touch them. They use the strategy of offending Christian as a means to gain access to an open door to reach the Christian. After this fire, the mermaid instructed me not to call my mother's name in the mirror. Then she said to me, "Do you have a son?" I replied, "Affirmative. I had a son with a woman but my family does not know." Then the mermaid asked me to call my son's name in the mirror, and he appeared in the magic mirror. The mermaid gave me a knife and asked me to stab my son's image in the mirror. As soon as I did, I noticed that my son was shaking. He collapsed into a coma, and his mother panicked. May I inform you that most sudden deaths and cardiac attacks are mystical attacks and a result of witchcraft, and only prayer in the name of Jesus Christ can save the victim. But the mother of the child was not Christian, so she ran to the hospital. As a result, the child died. The mermaid and the 2 newts applauded me and congratulated me, saying, "Congratulations, you are brave." While I was mourning my son, the mermaid said to me, "Get yourself ready, for tomorrow we will come to take you for the journey into our underwater world for the wedding ceremony, during which you will be enthroned and consecrated as a newt." They told me that I would become like them and I would have power after this consecration. The conversion of the agent of the underwater world. After offering 25 souls to the devil, I was congratulated by the mermaid, who was with 2 newts, entities whose lower part is that of fish. It was painful for me because I sacrificed my own sister and my own son, but the mermaid was trying to encourage me, and she said to me, "Joseph, since you have conquered, the next day I will come for you and take you to the underwater kingdom for your consecration and your enthronement as Triton. Then our marriage would be consumed after you have been given the power to transform into a newt." But on that week's Saturday, my mother, who was a born-again Christian, had a dream. In that dream, she saw me holding an antique knife, the one the mermaid used to stab her victims in the magic mirror. It was exactly the knife the mermaid had given me to kill my own son. It was really a sharp knife. The handle of this knife had ancient writings similar to Egyptian hieroglyphic writing. I thought it could be the writings of the underwater civilization. My mother dreamed that I was holding this knife and I was chasing the whole family to stab them, and all the family members were fleeing to save themselves. My mother said that when she saw me haunting the family, she noticed that I had blood all over my body, and in that dream, she was trying to protect the family from me. Then she ran into something and she fell to the ground, and it was when I was about to stab her that she awoke from sleep. The Bible says that for God does speak, now one way, now another, though man may not perceive it, in a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls on men as they slumber in their beds. Job 33 hours 14 minutes minus 15. My mother was not happy with this dream. In fact, when my mother was born again she committed herself to support God's work with her finances. She was a businesswoman at that time, and when she had that dream, she went to see men of God for direction and guidance. She told them about this dream, then she asked them to come and pray for the house and the family, and they came to pray for the family after Sunday service. It was when they were about to leave that my mother heard the voice of the Spirit instructing her to sow a seed, and my mother sowed a seed of $1,700. At that time, you could buy a house with this amount of money. After sowing this seed, the men of God prayed for her, but as these men of God were about leaving our compound, they received a revelation from the Lord for my mother. As a result, they walked back to give my mother the revelation from the Lord. The men of God said to my mother, "The Lord Jesus told us to tell you to ask him anything you want. He will grant it to you because your seed has been accepted by the Lord who has honored it." But my mother was already a businesswoman and she was relatively wealthy. She had cars, houses and a lot of money. Since she wanted me to come to the Lord, she asked Christ for the salvation of my soul. After the men of God prayed for the salvation of my soul, they were about to leave. In fact, they were already leaving when they heard the voice of Jesus again. They came back to my mother and said to her, "This is what the Lord tells us. Your son will come to visit you on Wednesday and this is what you need to do. You will prevent him from leaving your compound before noon. When your son comes on Wednesday to visit you, do not let him leave you before noon." Yet, my wife, the mermaid, told me that she would come and pick me up at noon to take me to the underwater for the ceremony of my consecration and enthronement. She was supposed to come at 11:55. These men of God asked my mother to keep this prophecy secret, so the Friday of that week, I was in my hotel in the morning and the mermaid came to confirm that she will come to take me on Wednesday at 11:55 to take me to the kingdom of mermaids underwater. It was early in the morning that Wednesday when I felt an unknown voice in me urging me to visit my mother. I never heard such a voice that had much authority, and I have never heard it again in my life. I was driven by a force to my mother. I did not know that my mother had bought big padlocks to prevent me from leaving the compound before the time indicated by the Lord. In fact, my relationship with my mother was not good because when she saw my wife, the mermaid, she did not like her. My mother was a born-again Christian and authentic. She was filled and led by the Holy Spirit. When my mother was in front of the mermaid, she felt in her spirit that my wife was not an ordinary human being. It was like the meeting of two opposing powers and vibrations. My mother could not stand it and the mermaid could not stand the power of my mother either. And since my mother was born again, she saw revelations and visions about my works of darkness. She knew I was in occultism. As a result, there was a conflict between her and me. But this Wednesday morning, when I went to my mother's house, I was surprised at how she had received me and I noticed that she was constantly singing songs of praise and adoration. At a certain point, I saw my mother shut the main door of the compound with large locks. Then she said to me, "Joseph, the Lord Jesus Christ recommended me not to let you leave my home before it is 12 o'clock. I objected energetically. Since I was opposed to this suggestion, we began to argue, but my mother was adamant. She refused to open the door. When it was 11 a.m., I began to feel desperate. I had an appointment with the mermaid at 11:55. I was very angry because of my mother's attitude. As a result, I began to insult her so as to shock her and thus push her to let me go. Since my mother was stubborn, I began to abuse her verbally. As I tried to open the door, my mother grabbed me by her hands to stop me from leaving. Then I started to strike her on her hands to free myself from her hands so that she could let me go. But even today, I have never understood what happened that day. Although I hit her hands, she held me and I felt she did not feel anything. I knew that if I missed this appointment with the mermaid, I would suffer fatal consequences. As soon as 12 o'clock struck, I noticed that my mother let go of me as instructed by the Lord Jesus through the men of God. I knew I had missed my appointment with the mermaid who was going to take me to the underwater so that I would be enthroned as a newt, and I knew there would be consequences. In fact, this ceremony of enthronement in the underwater domain was supposed to bring together high dignitaries, kings, and authorities of the marine kingdom. As I said, there are many mermaid races and dynasties in the marine world, and there are several creatures like newts, hybrid demons and half-fish creatures in the underwater realm. When I realized that I had missed the ceremony of induction and consecration, I started to cry. I said to my mother, "Mom, you've killed me, you do not know what you've done." My mother said, "My son, I've saved you," and as I was angry, before leaving her house I took a big stone and threw it on the window of her car. Then I left her compound and headed for the hotel where I lived with the mermaid. On my way to the hotel, I thought it was unlikely that I would leave this hotel alive. I told myself that I would be killed by the mermaid because I missed the appointment of the consummation of our marriage while the dignitaries and authorities of the underwater world were gathered and waiting for us in the world of waters. Beloved, Christians can come to church late, but this is not the case for Satan's kingdom. When you cannot keep time, there are consequences. By the way, in that consecration ceremony that I missed, I was going to become a newt and I had to receive the power of mermaids. As a result, I was going to become able to transform myself into a hybrid man with the lower part being that of the fish, I mean Triton. There were already Satanists and high-level demons there that were waiting for us in the underwater world, but the Lord through my mother disturbed the whole program, so I left my mother's house and took a taxi to the hotel where I lived to meet the mermaid. When I arrived at the hotel, I was filled with fear. I dreaded death. I did not know if I would come out alive. And when I opened the door to our room at this hotel, I saw the mermaid sitting on the bed. She was furious and naked. But strange enough, I noticed that there were many wounds all over her body. So she said to me, "Joseph, do you see what your mother did to me?" I was surprised to hear the mermaid talking about my mother. I told her that I left my mother at home. This testimony is the 6th part in a series of 6. Please read the other 5 parts. Beloved, we cannot say it enough, the armies of heaven are waging wars and unseen battles against the devil's world in our favor as a result of our prayers. I remember when I left my mother, she said, "No one is going to harm you. Do not worry," this despite all the verbal abuse to which I subjected her to. So, the mermaid started telling me that they had come to take me to the hotel to transport me under the ocean in the Aquarius kingdom for the enthronement ceremony and our wedding ceremony as agreed. She said the powers and kings of the underwater world were waiting for us. She said to me, "Since we did not find you at the hotel, we then came to your mother's house. When we entered your mother's compound, we found your mother preventing you from leaving. But when your mother started singing songs of praise and adoration, the sky was opened, and as a result, 3 angels glowing of light landed in your mother's compound. These angels held flaming swords, and each time that we tried to separate you from your mother, these 3 angels cut us with their swords. Joseph, look at how I am wounded all over my body because of you and your mother. We fought to separate you from your mother so that she let you go. But her angels were cutting us with their swords and they kept us from getting you out of your mother's hand." While the mermaid told me what had happened, I wanted to sit beside her on the bed but she angrily reprimanded me and said, "Joseph, get up." I got up trembling. Then she hit her hand on the wall of the hotel room and a magic mirror appeared. Then the mermaid said to me, "Joseph, I cannot see you in the magic mirror anymore. I do not know what your mother did to you. I do not know where she hid you. But you disappeared from the system and our instruments." The mermaid was furious, but I noticed a change in her because normally when she's angry, and she's talking. It's like fire is coming from her mouth, but it seemed to me that her power was affected by the encounter with the angelic power. She seemed weak as an ordinary human being, but I was expecting the worst from her. I thought she was going to get rid of me by killing me, so she kept looking for me in the magic mirror, but in vain. She even put her head inside the magic mirror. She did not see me. Then the mermaid said to me, "Joseph, I'm finished. You've put me in trouble and in danger. I do not know what to do." I realized that the mermaids could no longer see me in their instruments. I remember the words of my mother who said, "They will not see you in their tools and devices anymore, and they cannot do anything to you." These words of my mother had results because I became invisible in satanic systems and instruments. Having been watched from my childhood in the mystical mirror of the underwater realm, God had fulfilled my mother's words and made me invisible to devices and tools for control and detection of the underwater world. Beloved, prayer can make you invisible to the cameras and radars of Satan's world. After that, I saw the mermaid enter the bathroom. I tried to follow her and see what she was doing in the bathroom. When I opened the bathroom door, it was as if the bathroom had transformed into the river, so instead of seeing the bathroom, I saw a massive river. I wondered how a bathroom could become a river, and I noticed that the mermaid's hair had become very long and numerous. Around the mermaid, I saw all kinds of lotions, all kinds of soaps and makeup products she used. In fact, one day my lotion was finished and I thought, I'm going to have to use the mermaid lotion. And this day it was the first time I used her lotion, but when I went out on the street it was outrageous. Women were crazy about me. I could not understand what was happening. Even married women were following me. When my uncle saw me he shouted, "What's wrong with you, Joseph? Why are all these women following you?" In fact, the mermaid applied this lotion every 3 hours to renew her beauty, and it was after 3 hours that I became normal again. The demonic beauty was gone and those women who followed me began to leave me one by one. The mermaid lotion I had applied to my face had given me a demonic beauty. Many of the beauty products that women use are made in the water world by mermaids. These products give women a demonic beauty and make them attractive. One day it was at the beginning of my relationship with the mermaid, I found her having sex with 7 men. Later, she told me that this allowed her to increase her power. If you are a woman and you think that a partner is not enough for you, you need deliverance. And when a man tends to sleep with a lot of women, it's not about the pursuit of pleasure but about power. He must be in occultism. I said I was looking at the mermaid washing in the bathroom that had turned into the river. As she knew I was looking at her, she had become very angry, so I closed the door. When it was 6 o'clock, I told her that I would go out a bit and that I am going to a local nightclub. She told me, "Joseph, let's go together." "But your mother has destroyed me," I replied. "You are a mermaid, you have power and authority, how can my mother destroy you?" She said to me, "Joseph, I am an underwater spirit, but this human body has been offered to me, so I am incarnated in this physical body to become your wife and live with you on the surface of the earth. But your mother has neutralized my power, my mission in your life is compromised, so I have failed. And there is nothing I can do now. Things are no longer in my hands. We are going to the nightclub. If you see someone dressed in red clothes, know that they are the servants of my father. They are responsible for killing you. They had decided to kill you today." When we went out, we arrived at the nightclub. The mermaid stayed in the car, but I went alone into the nightclub. While I was drinking, I saw 4 people dressed in red drinking and talking. They avoided looking at me. But when I wanted to go to the bathroom, I noticed that they got up to follow me, so I gave up. Then I saw 4 beautiful ladies dressed in red. They were really beautiful. Then I went out of the nightclub to avoid them. I told myself that I had to go back to my mother where I could be safe. But I noticed again the people dressed in red in the street and it was 3 a.m. After that, my wife the mermaid told me, we reached a point in our relationship that could not be reversed. In reality, she came to live physically on the surface of the earth so that I could marry her. But first I had to be a Triton, that means a man with the lower part of a fish. But thanks to my mother's prayers, this process was stopped. As the mission of the mermaid had failed in my life, she had to return to the underwater world. Before leaving our world, the mermaid warned me that her father had delegated his agents to kill me, and she cannot stop them from doing that. Then the mermaid asked me to follow her in the toilet. When we got to the toilet, she pulled a lot of things out of her bag. It was a mirror, a bottle containing a fish, a lotion and many other things. Then she began to throw all these items in the toilet. She threw her lotion in the toilet and her mirror. Then she took the bottle containing the fish and said, "If only we had gotten married, you would have become a newt and we would have given birth to a baby mermaid like me and you. I was just going to swallow this fish and we were going to have a physical baby, another mermaid on the surface of the earth like me." Then I saw the mermaid break the bottle containing the fish, and as a result, I saw with my own eyes this fish transform into a girl with the lower part is that of a fish. She had an angelic beauty. At this moment, I saw as if the toilet disappeared and turned into the river. Then, I saw a whirlwind in the river that penetrated into the depths of the river and headed for the underwater world. Then I saw my wife and the mermaid girl descend into the whirlpool around the river that descended to the underwater world at a supersonic speed. This was my separation from the mermaid. When I came out of the toilet, I saw people dressed in red in this bar where I was. I started to flee to escape them. But once I came out of this bar, I saw a lot of people dressed in red coming from all sides towards me. It was 3 a.m. and there was nowhere to run. There was no possibility of escaping them. That is when I saw a car coming out of nowhere. The person driving the car looked like a Western person. He drove his car towards me and opened the door of his car for me. I do not know if it was Jesus or an angel, but it was the intervention of God. The man told me to come in and stay inside the car until dawn. When this man spoke of dawn, I remembered the ritual in the cemetery that was interrupted by a powerful voice announcing the arrival of dawn. This voice put an end to all the evil activities of the night. After entering this car, I saw these agents of the maritime kingdom surrounding the car in which I was. They did not dare open the door, but they screamed at me telling me to get out of the car. But this driver whose identity remains mysterious told me, "If you want to stay alive, you have to stay inside the car, otherwise you will die." Since I stayed inside the car, these agents of Satan's kingdom began to create images of illusions to get me out of the car. They created holographic images of my wife the mermaid to get me out of the car, but I knew it was a manipulation. They created fake pictures of things I like to get me out of the car, but I knew it was an illusion. I stayed in the car and when it was dawn, these underwater world spirits disappeared one by one. They vaporized in the air because they could not stand the daylight. As it was morning, this man said to me, "You can get out of the car." And he gave me money to buy a Bible. When I got out of the car, I started running. A few minutes later, I turned to look at the car for the last time but it was no longer there.